What is up, guys? It's your boy Boo back again with another video. Today, guys, we're gonna be reacting to 3 madly scary horror stories. This is my first reaction on this channel. So if you guys want me to react to more videos, make sure to drop a like and a sub, and make sure that you guys subscribe, smash that like button, and hit the bell at the top, so then you guys are notified every single time I upload a video. And make sure to go follow my TikTok at Blue Cobra 1YT, and give me the 1.2K. And we're here with Cooper.
Hey guys, so I'm gonna be reacting to the same video as him because we both found the same video and we are going to be reacting to it. So basically, we're just going to watch it and also go subscribe to Mort because he's the person who made all these horror stories.
Let's watch it.
So are you ready to start it?
Yeah. 3, 2, 1, go.
For the longest time, I was a tombstone caretaker for a cemetery in rural Georgia. It was only a summertime job for a 16-year-old, nothing too crazy, just cleaning off the grime and build up dirt from off of the tombstones and stuff. Now, to kind of set the scene a little, the cemetery included one building that housed bathrooms for the 5 caretakers employed by the cemetery, in addition to one small, simple mausoleum. Other than that, it was all just flat earth with tombstones littering the entire site. The whole place felt pretty cut off too, as surrounding the place were some of the densest forests in the entire state of Georgia. Naturally, because of the eerie surroundings, I was always a little bit more paranoid than maybe I should have been. That, and I watch a ton of horror movies and such, which I get as a terrible combo for someone working at a cemetery. So one night, I'm doing my rounds when I have to go into the small mausoleum. We had some of the wealthier families in the area entombed within, and it was my job to go in, make sure all was neat and clean, making sure it met the standards of these uppity folks.
There's an ad. Frick you, ad. Yeah, after the fair, guys. Okay. Woohoo!
I'm walking over to it, and right off the bat, I feel like something is off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first, just this general sense that I wasn't alone. That's about the time that I noticed candlelight coming from the small mausoleum. I was also pretty certain that I could hear voices coming from inside too, like younger voices, kids my age at the time. They were giggling and laughing, and it didn't sound particularly wholesome. Now, I hadn't seen anyone enter or leave the cemetery, but I also wasn't about to potentially take on a bunch of drunk teenagers on my own, as I definitely would have got my butt whooped. So I called the lone security officer on duty, the dude that does a few rounds on the lot. He was an older, retired cop, but he was definitely tough, and I knew he'd jumped at the chance to help me out. When the ex-cop finally turns up, we both go inside. It was empty, which made absolutely no sense, as I'd literally just heard voices and stuff inside. And there were indeed lit candles inside, burning around one of the tombs, a tomb that had been opened up to reveal the remains of a child-sized skeleton. Nothing other than that was disturbed, but that was bad enough, mainly because the open tomb contained a rotten old child's doll, like the knitted kind. It was seriously disturbing to see that old thing smiling away whilst lying hand in hand with an actual kid skeleton. Me and the security guard quickly got out of there, doing a lightning sweep of the grounds to try to at least get eyes on these sick idiots that desecrated that girl's final resting place. Neither of us saw a soul, which was more frustrating than it was scary, and after about a quarter of an hour, we met back at the mausoleum to set the girl's grave in order by sliding the stone tablet back on top of the tomb. When we stepped inside, the doll that was previously hand in hand with the dead girl was sitting on the other side of the mausoleum, like just sat there, upright, with that same uneven smile stitched across her face. Whoever was messing with us had actually gone back to move that doll to taunt us. I quit the next day and never went back, not even to visit.
Story 2, guys. Story 2. Let's go!
Okay, so years ago, my dad purchased a cemetery when I was in middle school, and I worked for him through high school graduation. I did yard work, mowing, weeding, tended to flower beds, etc., and aside from the occasional shadows seen out of the corner of my eye or hearing strange sounds, the cemetery was actually quite a peaceful little place. But the strangest is when you have a burial in the crypts. Basically, you dig down about 5 or 6 feet to expose a giant pair of stone slab doors. You pull the stone doors off and then drop down into a tiny, cold, dark room. These rooms can either fit 2 full-size coffins, 4 children's coffins, by far the hardest to deal with, or years and years worth of cremated remains. So back in the 50s and 60s, families would purchase one crypt and the entire family tree would be cremated and interred inside it. Some just put the cremated remains in it and close it up, but others lit candles and leave mementos, flowers and souvenirs, pictures and stuff like that. It's really creepy opening up one of those things after like 50 plus years and finding all kinds of melted candles and old pictures of the deceased people inside. Not only that, but when you hop down in there enough times, eventually you have a weird realization that you are at the same level and completely surrounded by bodies. And that, one day, inevitably, you're going to be joining them. Another time, my best friend and I were earning a little money over summer at the cemetery, working as groundskeepers when we were juniors and seniors. It was easy money. We got paid $5 an hour, mostly for edging or trimming and generally keeping the whole place nice and tidy. We raked a lot of leaves and dug a lot of holes that summer, but we also got to tear around the grounds in what was basically a souped-up golf cart with our tools in the back. There was a lot of dead flowers to dig up, not to mention a lot of empty liquor bottles, beer cans, and unfortunately on occasion, even some used condoms. There was a widow who left scribbled notes on her husband's grave, almost all of them completely illegible. Also a lot of sodden stuffed animals left on the graves of children. It felt so wrong throwing that stuff in the trash, and take my word on it that it sucked even harder than digging holes. It was annoying to work in the rain, and it rained often, but it was truly a gravy job, no puns intended. The creepiest thing I saw was one of the old-style baby dolls that had been left on a graveyard. Not inherently spooky, I know, but what creeped us out was the fact that it was badly burned, almost like someone had gone over it with a blowtorch or something. Not just that either. It had what we discovered to be these big iron nails that had been driven into the spaces its eyes should have been. Probably just some local college kids playing a prank or something. Heck, it could have been my buddy, but he never admitted to it. It just really creeped me out to see that thing one early morning, when there wasn't another soul in sight. Having said that, there was something far, far worse I encountered while doing that job. It was the naked corpse of a young woman my age, left neatly with her arms at her sides one foggy Saturday morning. She had been strangled right there. Whoever murdered her had also bludgeoned her horribly. She was identified quickly, and it turned out that she was a student at a neighboring high school, but her clothes were never found, and to my knowledge, her murder was never, ever solved. My friend and I were grilled by police on 2 separate occasions, and honestly, I think that was the scariest part, knowing we were actually implicated in the murder. But we didn't know a thing, and each had alibis, so thankfully we were eventually rolled out, and thankfully, the cops never bothered us anymore. I just pray that she's resting in peace.
Alright guys, story 3, let's go.
Former funeral director here. A bit of a setup first. The cemetery I run is real old, like by a good few hundred years. At least it must be, since the church next to it was constructed during the 17th century. Considering the fact that it is a pretty rural place as well, most people back in the day were buried with only wooden crosses and such, no stone or marble. So as time goes on, crosses rot and wither away, new people get buried, etc. Nowadays, due to less people living out here in the sticks, which means our budget is increasingly limited, the cemetery is really run down and overgrown. It is a really pretty place, and it's honestly pretty depressing. So as some of you can imagine, When you keep burying bodies in the same small patch of dirt for that many centuries, eventually the soil has been worked over dozens and dozens of times. So in the end, it consists of mainly bone meal. You can't even rake over the flower beds there without accidentally uncovering some teeth or finger bones or something equally grim. It's nothing but fragmented skeletons all the way down through the thin turf. The soil sort of resembles the kind of dirt you see near sandy beaches, except on closer examination, all the light-colored parts are just bone fragments rather than crushed seashells. Not really scary or unexpected, just super eerie until you eventually get used to it.
Want to start an online store quickly with products that are ready to sell? Head over to Wix.com/drop.
You learn to treat anything recognizable as human remains with respect and just tuck it away out of sight under the plant or whatever else you were putting there. Anyway, so someone was taking care of their relative's grave and decided to expand the area around the grave. For some reason, the people around her are not particularly fond of grass, rather preferring a well-leveled ground with Zen garden lines made with a rake. The person removed the grass and was sprucing up the place with a rake when they pulled up a bunch of snow-white hair from the dirt. They must have just freaked out and ran out of there, leaving the cemetery attendant to stumble across what was essentially hair coming out of the ground. She reported it to the church and supposedly they reburied the remains. Even with all my years as an undertaker, I'm not entirely sure how there could have been a body so close to the surface. But there's another incident that sticks with me even more than that one. My business partner and I had just gotten back to the funeral home from a call for a 27-year-old woman who tragically passed away due to terminal cancer. As we were moving her body from the cot to an embalming table, we heard an audible click, and the radio across the room turned on full volume of static. It's one of those old radios you turn the volume dial until it clicks to turn it on. We both looked at each other, pale as ghosts. He happened to be extremely religious, and this event visibly shook him. He found an excuse to leave early not long after the incident. So I shut the radio off as I typically use my iPhone to listen to music while doing embalming work. When I'd finished the procedure and was attempting to move her from the embalming table to a dressing table, I heard that click from the old radio and it turned on full volume yet again. At this point, I was fairly freaked out and got out of there not long after. My partner and I never spoke of it again, and nothing like that had ever occurred to my knowledge before or after.
No, that was it for mine, bro. So, I'm gonna watch another one.
So, when I was young, I went to that one...
Yo,
Yeah, my finished as well.
so you can look this up, but I'm watching 5 Halloween horror stories animated.
house in the town where the residents went all out and probably spent thousands of dollars getting the place perfect for Halloween. Now, this place was insanely well done, and I mean really freaking good. Albeit, even as an adult, it competed with professional haunted houses. I believe the year was either 1999 or 2000 because I went as Darth Maul. I remember being...
What is that noise?
Oh, I'm watching another video.
Oh, well then why is it so...
Go to sleep.
Oh. Well, can you...
Jeff the Killer is also saying go to sleep.
Oh, what the heck?
literally scared out of my mind the previous few years, and I hope my badass character would provide me with some sort of courage. They blocked off the scene with a black tarp and had everything you could ever want to see at such a...
Bro, can you turn that down? Okay, I just hung up the call with him because it was so annoying. So yeah, I'm just gonna
house.
watch this.
A psycho shower scene with a zombie crawling out of a toilet, ghouls and imps climbing the tree, blood, gore, strobes, fog, everything. I remember feeling terrified, even with my double lightsaber. Even though I was scared to death to walk through it, I always admired the workmanship, as I knew that the props they had were either really expensive or took some good effort to make. To this day, I've never seen a better yard than that. As always, every year, I saw the house owners sitting on their porch reveling in the terror they brought to the neighbourhood and handing out candy. So, I nervously crossed the yard past flying banshees and impaled corpses, I noticed the main attraction at the end of the line. There, on what I guess was probably the driveway, was the bottomless pit attraction. The illusion bewildered and chilled me, and though it was only lit by the lone light bulb, it made the box glow like a low-burning furnace. I must have stared at it for a while when I suddenly heard a cough and a low hushed voice to my right. I don't really remember what was said, but I want to say it sounded something like, "Hey, check this out," or "Hey, I want to show you something," in a gruff and horsey kind of tone. I looked over and at first saw nothing but the wide gate to what was clearly the side of the owner's house. There was just a faint amount of light from the glowing pit to illuminate the outlines of the gated fence. After adjusting my eyes, I noticed a figure standing completely still. In fact, it was so still, I remember thinking it was just another static prop. My young mind just didn't register a lot of this, and was still looking for the voice I heard, not realizing it had come from the figure who I could still only barely make out.
No. Bro, like, this is not bad. It is so creepy.
After a few moments, I heard the voice again.
Listen.
I realized it had come from the figure and began to approach it. This was obviously a stupid idea, but in comparison to everything else that was happening around me, this figure seemed anything but imposing. So I cautiously approached the figure, trying to make sense of it. Suddenly, the figure began to move, and consequently, I froze solid. The light from the amber glow lit up its face just enough for me to make out its features. This I do remember clearly. It was a scraggly and rough-looking man with a coarse grey beard and yellowed teeth. His weathered and tattered clothing looked like it hadn't been cleaned in ages. He was smiling at me, though I had no idea why, but it unsettled me greatly under the hellish glow of the light bulb behind me. It all felt wrong. It was as if at that moment I had acquired some clarity and realised his presence here obviously was not part of the show. And considering I already also saw the owners, he clearly did not belong on the property. I screamed and ran out of there as fast as I could to the exit, not looking behind for a second. I probably got a few looks from the other kids around us, but as soon as I found my parents waiting outside, I told them about the man I saw. I saw one of the owners approach and ask if everything was alright. I said something like, "I didn't like the old man by the gate." He looked at me for a second and went, "What man?" I never went back there, ever again. Number 2. Several years ago, right before I was about to leave for trick-or-treating on Halloween, I got into a fight with my mum. I had told her I was going to pick up a friend and go out with that friend, but my mum insisted I had an adult with me. I raged, thinking it would be too embarrassing to have to follow around an adult like a child. I was old enough to look after myself, or at least I thought so. After the episode with my mum, I ran to my room, enraged that she would do that to me. However, instead of obeying her, I devised a plan to get what I wanted. My younger brother and sister were going to go trick-or-treating with my mum and my mum's friend and her son. I decided that I would tell my mum I was sorry for lashing out and that I was going to stay home and pass out candy. Then, after she left with my siblings, I was going to go out like I had planned. I had planned it perfectly too. I knew what time they were going to come back home. I knew what route they were going to take.
Yo guys, by the way, do not do what this kid's doing. Do not sneak out of your house because your mom said no.
And I congratulated myself for my cunning plan.
Especially when the weather looks like this. Especially.
After my family left, I got together my costume. I was going as a gangster, which was probably the worst thing I could have done, but I was blinded by my excitement to realise my mistake. My mind went wild with all the things I could do now that my parents were gone. I could really live. I got so deep into this idea of being on my own that I decided I was going to trick-or-treat on my own and called my friend to tell her I was cancelling. Another huge mistake. I left the house with quite a bit of confidence in myself. The first street I went down went great. I got loads of candy and was having a great time. Once again, my excitement and confidence blinded me from the strange looks I got from being alone. I turned left down another street. my pride building with every step. I was almost at the end of the street, thinking of ways to explain all the candy I'd got to my parents, when I realized I was being followed. By the time I had come to this realization, I was at the section of the street where it was kind of out in the open, no trees between the sidewalk and the road, and I didn't see any other kids near me. There was a car, and quite a trashy one at that, following a few feet behind me. All my confidence had vanished and my hair stood on end. I glanced behind myself at the car and all the windows.
Question. Okay, so say if you were to do this, I'm not saying to do it, but say if you were to do this, guys, don't do what he's doing. Why would you stand there, bro? Like, if a car's gonna follow you from behind, don't stand there. Maybe you should walk. Maybe actually walk like between the road to see if they're actually following you. Then you can maybe knock on one of the house doors and so this car's following me, so can I just come inside? So then I feel safe. Try and get some help.
Were down, and 3 men were in the car, all smoking cigarettes. They were glaring right at me. As soon as I caught their stare, all the warnings my mother had given me about creeps like this hit me in the head. I looked down at my gangster costume and knew I blew it. I looked like a thug. I quickly turned back around and started walking, my heart beating out of my chest. My whole body went numb, and I instantly forgot how to do everything except walk forward. I was at the last house on the street with the car still following close behind when I made the split decision to turn up the driveway of the last house. Now, the house I turned to was completely abandoned and had been for years. The windows were boarded up and the front yard had been scattered in junk. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that the house was abandoned too. The car stopped right in front of the house, and everyone inside the car was just staring directly at me. I walked up to the front porch and turned around, thanking God for the tall bushes blocking the porch from the street and blocking the creeper's view. I stood there for at least a minute, staring right back at them, knowing I wasn't going to make it. My heart thumped out of my chest, and I could hear it ringing in my ears. One of them got out of the car.
Oh my gosh.
He stood and looked directly at me through the bushes and into my soul. I stood holding the rusty doorknob, staring right back at him. We must have stood like that for a long 10 seconds before the man got back into the car and they peeled down the street. Once they were gone, I ran as fast as I could across the street and up the opposite direction, frantically looking for someone I knew. I spotted my brother's friend and his mother and walked right behind them until they reached my street. I got a few weird looks from my mum, but I really didn't care. I ran up to my house and cried myself to sleep. I still live in the same neighborhood, and every time I pass the abandoned house, I silently thank it for saving my life. I don't know why the creeps didn't come after me, as they likely knew that the house was also abandoned.
This upcoming Halloween will be my 40th birthday, and even after nearly 25 years, the terrifying memory of that night has never faded. You see, I lost my virginity in a pumpkin patch on Halloween. I know, cliché. Specifically, I lost it in the bed of a pickup truck while it was parked in the pumpkin patch. To give you an idea, the patch was maybe 80 by 100 feet, and fenced off by wire mesh to prevent cows from getting in. The truck was parked just inside the only gate. Myself and my date had settled there right before the sun went down. My house was just across the street from the pumpkin patch. We shared a bottle of wine, awkwardly talked for a while, and then got to business. My family had 2 border collies, and as we were changing positions, the dogs wandered in and started barking at us.
Yo! Ooh, ooh, he gon' get it. He gon' get it. Guys, I may finish this, and then I'll probably be done by then. We're already 23 minutes and 40 seconds in, so yeah, I'll just end it after this one.
My date and I paused and drunkenly, playfully, began throwing scraps of food out into the pumpkins for them to chase. After a couple of minutes of that, we continued where we left off. After we were done, we sat there.
say? I didn't hear you.
Why don't I play Fortnite after? And like do like scary games on Fortnite. Since it's gonna be like a scary video.
Well, cause then the recording's gonna end, so I can't.
Why is it gonna end?
I don't know, but because when you do that, it always ends. So maybe in another video we'll do scary stuff on Fortnite. Alright?
Wait, can't you like pause your video and then whenever you go back into, then you go into Fortnite and then you go back and start the video again?
Yeah, I mean I could, but I'm not that good of an editor, so no.
I mean, you don't. I don't think you have to edit to do that, don't you?
Yeah, you do. You.
Oh, you
can't
do?
pause a
Oh.
YouTube video. Yeah, you do. So yeah, I'm just gonna finish watching this. And by the way, Cooper, if you wanna watch this, it's called 5 Halloween Horror Stories Animated.
In the truck and looked up at the stars while the dogs wandered around sniffing random things. After a short while, I saw my father return home, pulling into the driveway across the street. The dogs bounded out of the patch towards him, and me and my date quickly began to dress ourselves. Once we were fully clothed, we just sat on the tailgate and kept talking as we watched my dad pet the dogs and go into the house. It was about then that we heard it. A rustling sound coming from the patch somewhere behind us. We both paused and turned. At this point, there was only moonlight to illuminate our surroundings, but it was enough. And this is exactly what we saw. A single pumpkin began to rise up out of the patch, but not like someone was lifting it. It was kind of sideways, like it had been resting on its side and was now sitting up.
What the heck?
For a split second, I thought someone was rising this pumpkin out of the patch on a stick or a metal bar. But then the stick changed position. It coiled like a snake and then shot straight up, like a man would be if he went from a squatting position to a standing position. I then saw 2 spindly legs with knee joints protruding from the thing, but no arms. There was a buzzing in my ear, and all of a sudden my date screamed. We both jumped off the truck and booked it out of the patch and sprinted toward.
So, hold up. So, like, was that your car? Because I didn't know if they said this. But, like, was that your car? Or did y'all just hop in a random car and just started doing y'all's thing? Like, what? Okay.
Towards my house. I glanced back once, and I'll swear on whatever you want me to swear on. A tall, skeletal figure was leaning over the truck where we had both been sitting, and I caught a glimpse of 2 beady red eyes staring back at me. We made it to my garage and forced our way through the kitchen door. I began screaming at my dad to get his gun. It wasn't until I saw the blood on the kitchen floor that I realized that my nose had been bleeding. Even more alarming, my date's nose was gushing blood as well. I told my dad that there was someone in the pumpkin patch, and he grabbed his gun and power walked out of the house, the dogs following closely behind him. But they stopped halfway there, refusing to come any closer to the pumpkin patch. When my dad returned, he was livid. He wanted to know what had damaged the fence and broke the tailgate off my truck, which technically was his truck. I could only shiver in confusion and abject terror. He reported that something had knocked the tailgate right off the truck and then tore out of the patch from inside and destroyed a huge section of fence. I didn't sleep.
Yo, but the thing has no arms, so how did he just... Yo, I love how you guys may be like shivering at home. I have no idea, but I'm full on sitting like on my bed. I mean, I'm on my chair, straight up just watching this. Like, I'm not shivering
Sleep at all that night. I cowered in terror in the living room, with all the lights on. The next day, the police came and examined the scene. The wire fence had been torn out of the ground and dragged a short distance away.
Wait, the thing is, did that police sound effect happen when they showed up? Because at the exact time he said police, I heard a police siren. Hold up.
But all that night, I cowered in terror in the living room with all the lights on. The next day, the police came and examined the scene. The wire fence had been torn.
It didn't happen. So I heard this loud siren. Yo, I heard this loud siren at the exact same time that the
Out of the ground and dragged a short distance away. There was no clear indication of what specifically had done it. My father and the police were convinced that it was a trespasser pulling a Halloween prank. But I never believed that for a moment. I tried to explain that the dogs had been pounding through the patch minutes before the thing had appeared, and neither of them had made a sound to alert us that there was a trespasser nearby. Furthermore, the entry gate to the patch made plenty of noise whenever the wind rattled it. So if someone climbed over it, it would make even more noise, and we had been sitting right by the gate. Another thing that terrified me is the shape of the thing as it stood. Even if it was a trespasser with an elaborate costume, none of that would even begin to explain the tailgate, the destroyed fence, the nosebleeds, and our dogs being too nervous to approach the patch, or the eyes I had caught a glimpse of. My father went to his grave believing that we had been vandalized by trespassers. My date and I concluded later that whatever it was, it hadn't been human or an animal. I don't tell this story often because I mostly get the same Charlie Brown joke. It was the Great Pumpkin. So no one really takes me seriously. But I've heard that skinwalkers can take the form of anything that best suits their surroundings. Our property wasn't anywhere near a Native American reservation, but I can't think of anything else it could have been. So what do you think it was?
You know, that's a good question. Guys, comment down below, what do you think it was? Well, I think it was, you know, there's no way. It had to be a real person. Because if the gate was open, although the dogs, it's not there anymore. And the guy that we saw didn't have arms, but the dogs could have scared him away, cause they could have seen, cause the guy right here was running out the front. So what if the dogs went behind the back, tore open the gate, maybe started like scaring the guy, and then he ran through it, and then the dogs are now somewhere. So I don't know. Like, it's really hard. I don't think it's a person though. So yeah, let's keep watching. Oh no, this already looks scary. I just started this, and this already looks scary. Yo, by the way, my room also has like no lights on, so yeah.
It's been 10 years since I've spoken about this incident. On Halloween of 2009, me and my younger sister along with a couple of friends went out to trick-or-treat. I was only 8 years old at the time. My younger sister was 5. My best friend's older brother was 17, and it was his responsibility to look after us that night. This took place in London, and at the time, we hardly had any crimes in our area. The night went off without a hitch. Now we were all planning on calling it an evening since we had collected enough candy. My best friend's older brother was just about to call my dad, but before he could dial the number, he received a call from my dad. He let him know where to come to pick us up, and after a few minutes, my dad came and collected me and my sister. We said goodbye to our friends and thanked them for the fun evening. As my dad was driving my sister and I back home, he seemed on edge. Now, since I was only 8, I kept babbling on about how much candy we had collected, and how I couldn't wait to get home to eat them. My dad wasn't listening. He just looked really anxious about something. As soon as we got back home, I entered my house to find my mother, my aunt, and my cousin sitting in the living room. I greeted them, and my mother hugged both me and my sister. My dad sat us down and told us that we could never go out trick-or-treating ever again. Now, because I was 8, I began throwing a tantrum, complaining how I loved Halloween, and my parents were being unfair. My little sister was too young to even care. She was too busy going through the candy that we had collected. So after 2009, me and my sister never went out for Halloween. We didn't bother throwing a tantrum since we knew it would be pointless. However, in 2012, my brother was born, and last year in 2018, he turned 6. My father finally relented and agreed to take my little brother and my sister out trick-or-treating. By this time, Halloween had lost its appeal for me, and I didn't want to go out anyway. My little brother gets his way since he's the youngest, and he loves Halloween.
Should I make this a video?
I decided to ask my mom why she didn't allow me and my sister to go out on Halloween after 2009. She sighed and explained to me that a boy from our neighborhood had gone out trick-or-treating in the same area. He was with his friends, but had somehow separated from the group. He ended up knocking on the door of an old house that was located at the end of a quiet street. I'll spare you the gory details, but the boy's body was found in that house after several people heard screaming and called the police. The boy's arm had been removed from his body, and he died from blood loss. The police had been going door to door warning parents.
What's funny is that it was on Thursday. We were talking about but it was a girl though. I don't know if it was a girl or a boy, but it was a shark attack. We were talking about shark attacks, and it was based on a true story. I think it was about a girl, where this girl got her arm bitten off by a shark, and she died because of blood loss. So that's kind of insane.
Parents about what happened, and that's when my dad came and collected us. My mother told me that they arrested an old, mentally deranged man in connection with the crime, but Halloween would never be the same again for my neighborhood. I had heard rumors about a boy who was killed on Halloween at my school, but I never took it seriously. I thought it was just a local urban legend. But now I understood why my dad looked so worried that night. The house where the boy was found, which is only a few blocks away from mine, now sits abandoned, with its windows boarded up. People around here jokingly refer to it as the Myers house. Halloween is pretty much ruined for me.
Hold up. This is all coming together. You know how every store was on Halloween, and they were all boarded up, and the guy was at the abandoned house, and did you hear the last name that they did, the Myers house? Think about that name for a second. Myers. Michael Myers. I forgot. Michael Myers is a serial killer. It's called the Myers house. It's abandoned. We saw that in another video. Bro, this is insane, guys. I'm getting like way too freaked out. So I'm just gonna end the video here. Make sure that you guys subscribe, smash that like button, and hit that bell at the top so then you guys get notified every single time I upload a video. Make sure to go subscribe to TikTok to get me to 1.2 thousand followers. Well, 1,200 followers. How much are we at right now, guys? How much are we at right now? Oh, I have to scroll up a bunch. We are at 1,187. So we only need 13 more followers, guys. We got this. Let's get myself to 1.2K. Let's do this. I will see you guys in the next video. Also, make sure to go follow me and Moncray's make sure to go follow me and Moncray's TikTok channel, which is the Blue Mon Clan YT. And make sure to go sub to our YouTube channel at Blue Mon Team. Oh, by the way, the Our TikTok is actually monblue_clan YT. I'm sorry. But make sure to also go sub to our YouTube at Blue Mon Team. I'll see you guys in the next video, which will maybe be another reaction. Peace out, goodbye, and I hope you got scared. Peace.
I'll be